Hi guys, welcome to Facebook Live. It's 4:30, it's Friday. As I say, every week, we do this every week and we look at different topics. My name's Paul Blaine and I'm the Director of Training Services at Affinity Training and E-Learning for You. And the idea behind these Facebook Live sessions is to just maybe give you a little bit of an influence and help, advice in certain topics that allows you to go into the weekend or even next week and progress within your own organisation, your own business, or the way in which you deliver something. Now, we know over the past weeks we've done many different topics and we've very much focused on management side of things, so how to design future from social media all the way through to how to do a staff meeting. But over the next couple of weeks we are going to focus more on the health and social care side, and I'm going to bring in some special guests as I do that. Today I'm quite fortunate that Ghazala has joined me. Ghazala Ahmad is the Clinical Training Manager for Affinity Training and E-Learning for You. So she's in charge of all the trainers that go out to a lot of the classrooms for some of you that may be viewing this, and she ensures that the topics that they discuss or they teach are right and fit for purpose for you. So Ghazala, thank you very much for joining us. Ghazala has come from all the way from Birmingham to the even more north to be with me today, so we are very grateful for that. Obviously it's your audience, you know, or you will know a few of them you may know Ghazala. What we want to actually do today is to actually focus on a subject that's very close to you, Ghazala, and I know I've sort of like sat in some of your lectures or your classrooms, and whenever I've heard you speak about the subject that we're going to be talking about today, I've always felt empowered, if I may, or different about myself and the way that I'm actually going to go forward, particularly when you're talking about a subject such as end of life. So I guess what I'm going to try and get out of you today for the viewers who are maybe watching this live or watching it back later is what advice and strategies and things like that you can help people. Now, just before we go into that, guys, what I would say is if you are watching this live now and you want to ask us all a question, or even myself, please feel free to pop it down. We have Becky, who is on the camera today. Becky's one of our relationship managers, so she will read your question out, and I'm sure we'll do our best to answer it. If you're watching this back later and you want to leave a comment, then Ghazala, I'm sure you'll be quite happy to go in and give back some answers. If it's personal to you and you're watching this and you want to ask some questions, particularly around end of life or palliative care, then please feel free to direct message our Facebook site, and again, Ghazala will be able to pick that up and not everybody will be able to see it, so it'll remain personal to you. But we are here to support, we are here to help, so if we can advise in any way, we will. So I just want to sort of like to touch base on this subject, because I'm going to tell viewers a little bit about myself here as well. You see, I started off as a care assistant. I still am as far as I'm concerned. But I started off as a care assistant way back in my youth, before the grey beard actually appeared. And when I first started in care, it was quite different to what it is now. But in saying that, not completely different. And particularly when you start in care, there is that dreaded moment of I'm going to have to deal with death and dying, and it can be quite an intimidating and awkward subject to actually embrace and deal with. Now, thankfully today we have lots of training that's delivered by you, different standards that are done, different levels, which is good. But I mean, getting into it for the viewers, and if there's any managers watching, perhaps this is good advice for your staff, or if you are a staff member who works in health and social care, again, it might be good advice there. But my first question would be, what advice would you give to a member of staff starting out in care when it comes to death and dying or end of life?
I think this is the focus that we have when we do our end of life courses. We look at making sure that the individual that's attending the course, so you as a staff member, you're the important one at this moment. We will go into how important it is for the resident that you come with an understanding of who you are and what's been your life experience, possibly if you have had personal experience of death, or maybe professional experience of where you have experienced it with a team of people in a care setting. It's very different. Those two scenarios are different, and also what you bring to the table is very different. So you are unique. And if you can understand, how do I normally deal with stressful situations that bring up a lot of emotions, new situations, changes, you've got an idea of how you might deal with death and dying. Because it is a change, and it is very stressful, and you're not only dealing with your own emotions, but you're dealing with emotions of the resident, the person who is going through the process. You're dealing with the family and their grieving, and maybe their understanding and expectations that you don't even know about. And you're also then dealing with the team that you work with. The team is a collection of people who bring experiences, who may or may not understand the process of death and dying in the way that we train, but they know what they feel about it. So you've got a lot that you're juggling. So when you come into the course, first I want you to be aware of that. Maybe we'll ask you a question. When did you experience this? How did it feel? Because if you're aware of where you are at it, that's step one. You've identified, oh, I'm good with this, I'm not. I can deal with this, I'm scared of this, or whatever it is that you might come up with. After that, we'll start looking at how do you view the resident's process of death and dying. You're seeing it from the outside. You're not the person experiencing it. You're hopefully a person, a part of a bigger team that's going to help make that the best experience it can be. And that varies hugely, because there's a lot of factors that are going to contribute to that. You've got a person who's got their own experiences. You've got an individual with a family members and people that they love, friends that might be feeding into their experience. So that's a lot to take on. So when you've looked at yourself, then you've looked at how the resident and the family expect this to be, you can then move forward. So you don't know that though. You don't know what they expect it to be. So really when we're training, we're asking that. How are you going to know? How do you know how to make this the best experience for that individual and the family? And given the skill set you've got on that floor, in that home or that setting, how can you work with those needs? If you've established that, you will have lots of paperwork. You will have forms and ideas, and we've got advanced care planning. Maybe you're part of the gold standards framework in your environment. Maybe you've got forms about or what my life is, my life story. All of these things will feed into helping you understand, how do I make this the best experience that this person can have? I don't know if you want to add more.
No, I think that's it's sound advice at the end of the day. I mean, I guess when I first started off in care, it was getting that understanding that that death and dying is part of life, and you are going into an industry or an environment where it is a very much a part of an end process, if you like. Yeah. Even though it's not the end process for the people that haven't passed away, or so the reality of the situation there is the support mechanisms that go into the lead up and the support mechanisms that go after. And you're absolutely right to touch on things like advanced care plans and that, because that's where we get our information from to ensure that we meet the wishes of the person. But it's still very difficult for some staff to actually want to raise these points with someone who is alive, because of the fear of talking about something that is an end, if you like. So I mean, for staff to actually approach this, they have to get their own understanding and their own feeling, but then they actually have to get the empathy and the understanding of the person that they are caring for. Yeah. I mean, in terms of that, there's no right or wrong questions, is there?
I think it would be so hard. We talk about individualised care. How can you prescribe a set of questions that you need to ask it like this, in this sequence, at this time? You are learning about that resident and their families from the minute they come in, usually before they come in. But the idea of gathering information that will create an environment, so when that moment comes, or that period of time when we know it's end of life, we can then respond to the needs without asking those questions at that time. And remembering the grieving process will start before that time if people are aware that there is limited time. I had 20 years of knowing that my daughter had a terminal illness that was life-limiting. So I had a long time to prepare. I had time to work with my professionals, time to work with my daughter, time to work with my family, and to look at, well, what's important? Do you know, the end result is not what you're focusing on, because we know what that is. We view it as an end, but what the important thing is, what's going to lead up to that? How is that experience until that moment? How is that going to be the best that we can have given the set of circumstances? That's very individual. The family members that are involved, or friends, or carers that are involved is individual. The age, the stage, all of that is very individual, and you need to know how that works together. If you can look at this as a process, we've talked about it being an end. There's two things. Whenever there's an ending, and I'm sure you've all heard of this, there is a beginning. So when we're gearing up for somebody to have the best process to pass on death and dying, label it what you will, find the words that work for you. Then you're also looking at when that has completed, there's also people that are left that need to carry on. They are basically changing and adjusting to a change and in a new way. So it's a beginning. It's both. It's an ending and a beginning. Now, for people to move forward and have a family member that you've all experienced somebody passing on or dying that was close to you, that meant something to you, so you will have some experience of that if it was a pet, or even if it was a partner or somebody as a child. So you know who you are in terms of how that makes you feel. Now, the challenge and the opportunity is to take that experience and that awareness in yourself and actually use it in the next opportunity or chance you get to be a part of somebody else's process. And that's quite empowering. It's empowering to know, oh, I understand some of the things that you might go through. They won't be exactly the same. You're a different person to me. But I understand that the process took me to the areas that were very difficult for me to deal with. So now I understand they're taking you to areas that are very difficult to deal with. And who am I that in the face of helping another person face those difficulties? So it is an opportunity, and I feel very empowered after my daughter's death to be able to come back to work, not right away. I couldn't find the strength right away. The process was mine to own. It was up to me when I decided I was ready. And when I was ready and I dealt with the first death on a unit, I actually spoke to my team members and I said to them, you know what? I think I'm okay. It's been a while. I can talk about my daughter. She passed away, but I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with this because I haven't experienced it in this phase of my life. Bear with me. I had to do a verification of death. I would like to do this because I think I'm ready, but just be aware of how I might be in case I respond in a way that didn't work for me. And they were all very aware for me so that I could go, be a part of somebody else's passing on, and then have the team, and bless all of them, they came back and actually asked me, were you okay, Ghazala? I said, yeah, I'm okay. And that first one passed okay. So there is a movement through it, beyond it, and guess how enriched you are then as a result of that experience.
I mean, so we're very grateful and for you touching on something so personal to you. And when I've sat on in Ghazala's lectures or classes, it's that personal side of this that you can bring out that brings the emotion. But I guess just on the last point that you stated there, that the biggest part of advice has got to be open with your team. And if you're a new member of staff, let your colleagues know how you feel. Don't hold it up. Let that support mechanism be there, because you're supporting a much bigger thing at the end of the day. You're supporting everybody. But if you are someone who holds it in and doesn't really want to talk about it, then you're going to find yourself very isolated in that situation. So for care staff, it's so important that they use their colleagues and their team as support mechanisms throughout, because you still have, as you rightly said, with an end comes a beginning. If you're in a care facility, that beginning happens the next day, not only with the family members, but with the remaining people that reside within your care home and the other staff, because you're still at the situation where you have to help them with the grieving process, and we grieve better when we grieve together. But that, I mean, it's a great way to put it in terms of the way that even though you were the clinician, if you like, on the unit and the person that had to do this as part of your duty, you were still able to communicate that with the team so that they could support you and they could understand what your behaviour or your attitude may be at that moment in time. So I would take that as key advice to new staff members to actually start to discuss it. Even if it's between yourselves, that new members of staff coming into the industry who haven't experienced this, yes, they may have experienced it in their personal life, but it is now going to become a part of the career that they've chosen. And if they can start talking about it openly and get understanding, then the only people, well, all the people that will benefit from that is everybody in the organisation and everybody that resides within that care, because you will openly start to talk about information that can be used within an advanced care plan if needed. I mean, because I've also seen you deliver this to staff and to relatives who are going through this process, and taking them through the understanding of, I don't want to sort of like open up a big subject topic here because we don't have 3 hours to actually discuss it, but things like when people hear about gold standard frameworks and someone receiving care from the palliative team, and it's that case of sometimes that all these words are hitting people, or all these teams are hitting people at a time with very much emotion, and it's about staff actually understanding what that is, or it's about relatives understanding what that is, and that's the sort of thing that you talk about within your courses.
In our courses, I think yes, I've had relatives on the courses themselves, and I think one example I can remember where actually the family member had not realised what the staff have to go through and consider, and actually realise that their relationship with the person that was actually dying was actually very restrained and constrained and was affecting the staff. So it was a very positive outcome because it allowed them to go back and they actually started to talk to the loved one that they hadn't, who they hadn't spoken to for a long time. And I think this is about awareness of different perspectives. No matter what we do in healthcare, we're always trying to get a greater understanding of a different perspective. And I'm just going to tie in here, it seems a strange time, but it's something that I was discussing earlier today, the idea of a multidisciplinary team. We've just mentioned the palliative care team. You might have a GP involved, you may have OTs, physios, who are involved in other capacities, but also at the end, also towards that end of life care, you may still have many people that can be involved, and we want to use that in the best way. Religious leaders, cultural practices, we have to remember that not everybody follows a single process in what they believe about death and dying. We want to invite those people, but if we've done the work beforehand, we know to have those connections in the community. We know to invite those people into our care setting so they're comfortable, and families and residents know, oh, okay, this is part of our day-to-day experience here. And so, yes, it will be a part of when it's my time or when I need that to be part of it. So I think it's a big, possibly a big pro for working together. There's nothing wrong with somebody turning around saying, I can't talk about this. But if you've shared that much, I can't talk about this yet, great, I now know that's the issue. I now know it's not about something else that might be brewing as can happen with working in teams. I know it's about death and dying. I now know to step carefully. So again, just letting somebody know in the team, this is where I am at it, really helps us all move forward together.
I mean, because I was sort of like approaching the 20-minute mark, and I as much as this is a subject that can sometimes be difficult for people to talk about, I guess what we're trying to get the message across to people today is to actually begin the talking process about it. Don't fear it. Actually embrace it to a way. But I just wanted to touch base on one last thing, and that was obviously you and your team deliver a multitude of different training courses, and you know, all very important in their own right. But how important do you think delivering end-of-life training or palliative care training to care staff is within settings?
I have recently been training a course myself, and the feedback I was getting was not the course I was training, but the feedback I got was I wish they did end-of-life training externally to help them, to help our staff understand. When I thought about why did they want external training as opposed to in-house, because in-house training can be just as successful, it was because they needed another perspective. If you've got teams that are not 100% efficient and working, and maybe they don't have this idea of supporting each other in the best way, we work in very stressful situations sometimes, and an external person can come in and just remind us, oh, let's just stop for a moment, let's step back and let's look at this. For each one of you, this is a difficult process, and some people may have learnt to deal with it in an easier way and others have not yet. Can I just give that input? So sometimes an external person coming in and conducting that training is really useful. End of life is so important because each and every one of us thinks about it right from when we're young. As soon as we understand the concept that we're not immortal, we all have thought about it, and we may have had some very cross messages about how important it is. So we need to get this right.
Absolutely. Ghazala, thank you very much for your time. For the viewers watching, Becky, I've not heard you pipe up with any questions. So, but for people watching, it's a big topic, it's a big subject, and we have given a snapshot, a quick discussion around it. So please get in touch with Ghazala if you wish to actually ask her any questions around the subject matter. As always, feel free to leave your comments. The video of this will be available on the Facebook page, so please recommend it out to people if you've liked what you've seen or you think it's good information for other people. You can go over to a website page at www.elearning4u, that's FORYOU.co.uk, and if you click on the YouTube channel button that just sits at the top of the website, you'll see all the pre-recorded or the recorded video sessions that we've done, including this one will be available in the next couple of days. All the subjects that we talked about, we are going to be over the course of the year talking about a number of subjects, and we do hope they'll be helpful. Some will be extremely important in terms of your workforce and how to deal, focusing on health and social care. Others will be focusing on management of any other type. We will be talking to a lot of subject matter experts, so we would love you to actually engage with our subject matter experts and ask them the questions. Ghazala, I'm extremely grateful, and I'm sure the viewers are. I've said it again for giving the time today. It is empowering to hear Ghazala's story and to hear how you have been to lived in places like Canada and started this process, and back in the UK. And if you get the opportunity to sit on one of Ghazala's lessons, I would really encourage you to do so, because they're excellent. They really are. If you are a care home manager watching this and you aren't delivering any form of end-of-life training to your staff, then I just want you to think about how it would benefit those staff. Go and ask your staff and say, would you benefit from this? It's a question we don't ask enough of staff. How are you? How are your coping mechanisms? What can we do to support you in this subject? I promise you, it's one of the most difficult parts of this job. I can say it from all my years in care. I can say it from the thousands of people I've seen in classrooms, and I'm sure you are saying the same. So let's actually move forward in this subject and see if we can do more. I think that's it. Even if you're doing a wonderful job now, you can always still do more. I'm going to end it there. Next week, I'm back, and we're doing communication next week, so it links in with this as well. We're going to look at body language, we're going to look at listening skills, and we're going to look at how to actually project your voice in a way that people will listen to you. So it'll be quite an interesting topic. We've got CQC coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. There's topics on self-reflection, and I think we have another subject matter expert who's actually going to come and do a bit on fire regulations, etc. like that. So we're going to cover a vast amount of subjects over the course of the year. If you've tuned in, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this later on, thank you very much for watching again, and we'll see you next week.